The void serpent drifted through space, its hull scarred but intact. Inside, the silence felt heavy. Crystal walked through corridors that now housed both Dravik and human crew. The New Dawn was gone, destroyed to save them all. The surviving humans had nowhere else to go. 3 days after the battle, Captain Taman organized a memorial service. Crystal attended, standing at the back of the converted cargo bay. Humans filled the space, some in bandages, others supporting injured friends. They faced a wall where 42 names were displayed in light. Each name represented a life lost. Taman stood before his crew. His face showed the weight of command, the cost of decisions made in desperate moments. He began to read the names slowly, giving each one space to exist in the silence. Jinho Park. Age 24, security officer. Died defending Section C, Minji Song. Age 23, engineering technician. Died protecting civilians, the list continued. Young and old. Soldiers and civilians. Each name hit Crystal like a physical blow. He had seen death before, documented it clinically in his reports. But this felt different. These were not statistics. These were people who had stood beside him, fought beside him, and died for something larger than themselves. When Taman finished reading, he stood silent for a moment. Then he spoke, his voice carrying across the gathered humans. We came to space seeking a new home. We knew the journey would be dangerous. We knew we might face hardship. But we came anyway because humanity has always looked at the impossible and said, let's try. He paused, his hands gripping the podium. These 42 people did not die because they were weak. They died because they were strong enough to stand between danger and those who needed protection. They died because they refused to surrender to evil, even when surrender would have been easier. Crystal saw tears on many faces, but he also saw something else, determination. These humans mourned deeply, but they were not broken. We have lost our ship, Taman continued. We have lost friends and family. But we have not lost ourselves. We are still here. We are still human, and we will honor their memory by continuing forward, by surviving, by thriving, and by never forgetting what they gave us. The humans dispersed slowly after the service. Crystal found Yuna standing alone, staring at Minji's name on the display. The engineer's eyes were red, but her expression was set like stone. She was my friend, Yuna said without looking at him. We worked together for 3 years. She used to joke that I pushed the engines too hard. I told her they could take it. Her voice broke. She trusted me. They all trusted me to keep the ship running. And I destroyed it. You saved everyone on it, Crystal said. The reactor overload was brilliant strategy. It was suicide. Yuna turned to face him. I killed the New Dawn. I killed our home. Everything we worked for, everything we built, gone. Crystal considered his words carefully. Among Draviks we have a saying. The wise warrior knows when the blade must break to preserve the hand that holds it. Your ship was a tool. The people aboard were what mattered. You chose correctly. Yuna laughed bitterly. Easy for you to say. Your people are strong. You can take damage and heal. You live for centuries. You don't know what it's like to be fragile. To know that one mistake means death. To carry the weight of everyone depending on you when you're just as breakable as they are. You are correct, Crystal acknowledged. I do not know those feelings, but I have watched your people live with them every day, and I have seen what it creates. Your fragility does not weaken you. It forces you to be stronger in ways my people have never needed to develop. Yuna stared at him. What do you mean? Crystal pulled up his datapad showing his research notes. I have been studying your species. At first I documented weakness. Soft skin, fragile bones, short lives. But the more I observed, the more I understood. Because you are fragile, you value life more intensely. Because you can die easily, you fight harder to survive. Because you need each other, you build bonds that transcend logic. He showed her recordings from the battle. Humans helping injured comrades. Salman working for 36 hours straight. Minji charging a Vreth warrior with only a welding torch. Look at this, Crystal said. A Dravik would never do what Minji did. Not because we lack courage, but because we have never needed that kind of courage. Our scales protect us. Our strength shields us. We have never been forced to develop the mental fortitude that comes from being physically vulnerable. Yuna watched the recording of Minji's last stand. Tears streamed down her face, but she did not look away. My people are strong, Crystal continued, but we are strong the way a mountain is strong. Solid, unchanging, enduring. Your people are strong the way water is strong. You bend, you flow, you adapt. You find ways through obstacles we would simply try to break. And when necessary, you crash through barriers with force born of accumulated pressure. That sounds poetic, Una said. But it doesn't make us less dead when we get shot. No, Crixtel agreed. It does not. But it makes your survival more meaningful. Every human I have met knows death intimately. You carry it with you, always aware of your mortality. And instead of being paralyzed by that knowledge, you are driven by it. You make every moment count because you know you have fewer moments than most species. Over the following days, Crixtal continued his observations. He watched Somin train Dravik medical staff in human anatomy. She worked patiently, explaining the differences, showing them how to treat injuries on such fragile bodies. The Dravik doctors were fascinated and horrified in equal measure. You have no redundant organs? One doctor asked, shocked. One heart? 2 lungs? If these fail, you die? That's correct, Somin confirmed. We're built on the minimum viable configuration. Evolution made us efficient, not durable. How do you survive at all? Somin smiled, very carefully, and with a lot of help from friends. Crixtal spent time with Juan, watching the security officer train a mixed squad of humans and Draviks. The humans taught the Draviks about tactics, about using cover and concealment, about thinking 3 steps ahead. The Draviks taught the humans about direct assault, about leveraging superior strength. You fight like prey animals, one young Dravik said, not unkindly. Always hiding, always retreating. Juan nodded. That's exactly what we are. Humans were prey for most of our evolution. Big predators hunted us. We survived by being smarter, by working together, by never fighting fair. We learned to set traps, use tools, and attack from ambush. You might be stronger, but we're sneakier. The Dravik considered this. There is honor in strength, and there's survival in cleverness, Juan countered. Honor doesn't matter if you're dead. My job is to make sure my people live. If that means hiding and hitting from behind, so be it. One evening, Crixtal found Captain Taman alone on an observation deck, staring at the stars. The captain looked older than his years, the weight of leadership visible in every line of his face. May I join you? Crixtal asked. Taman nodded. Of course. Can't sleep either? Draviks require less sleep than humans. You, however, should be resting. Too much to think about. Taman gestured at the stars. We were going to a new world. A fresh start. New opportunities. Now we're refugees on an alien ship dependent on the kindness of strangers. You are not refugees. You are survivors. There is a difference, Taman smiled slightly. Is there? We lost our home. We lost our people. We're broken. Are you? Crixtal challenged. I have watched your species closely, Captain. Yes, you mourn. Yes, you feel pain. But you do not stay broken. You adapt. You rebuild. You continue forward. That is not weakness. That is the strongest quality I have ever witnessed. Why? Taman turned to look at him. Why do you care so much about understanding us? Crixtal was silent for a long moment. Because you challenged everything I believed about strength. I'm 347 years old. I have fought in 12 wars. I have studied 43 species. I thought I understood what made a warrior, what made a survivor. Then I met humans, fragile, brief, impossibly vulnerable humans, and you taught me that I knew nothing. He pulled up a file on his datapad. This is my preliminary report to the Dravik Empire. I was supposed to assess whether humans were worth preserving, whether you had value as allies or should be left to your own fate. Do you know what I am recommending? Taman shook his head. I am recommending that we not only preserve humanity but study you, learn from you, because you have something we lack. You have been forged in the fire of constant vulnerability. Every generation of humans faces death and survives anyway. You have developed strength of will that my people, comfortable in our physical superiority, never needed to develop. Crixtal showed him statistics. Draviks are stronger. We live longer. We heal faster. But when a Dravik faces impossible odds, we often break mentally before we break physically. We are not trained to endure hopelessness, you are. You were born into a universe that wants you dead, and you survived anyway. That is power. Taman studied the report. You're saying our weakness is our strength? I am saying your weakness created your strength. Like pressure creates diamonds. Your ancestors were weak, so they became clever. They were vulnerable, so they became cooperative. They were mortal, so they became determined to make their brief lives matter. An alarm interrupted their conversation. Krikstal's command link activated. The tactical display showed a nightmare. 27 Vreth warships approaching in attack formation. The sensor data scrolled across Krikstal's screen like a death sentence. This fleet was not here to raid or capture. This was extermination. Commander Vexcor stood at his command station, studying the approaching enemy with cold calculation. Around him, Dravik officers worked their stations with practiced efficiency. But Krikstal could see the tension in their movements. Even Draviks understood impossible odds when they saw them. Analysis, Vexcor commanded. The tactical officer did not hesitate. We cannot win, Commander. Even at full strength, the Void Serpent could not defeat this force. And we are damaged, operating at 70% capacity. Recommendation, immediate retreat to faster than light speed. Time to jump? 3 minutes to charge engines. The Vreth will be in weapons range in 5 minutes. Vexcor's claws drummed against his chair. And the humans? Silence fell across the bridge. Everyone knew the answer. The humans had no ship. They could not escape. If the Void Serpent jumped away, the Draviks would live and the humans would die. Krikstal stepped forward. Commander, request permission to speak. Granted, we cannot abandon them. Krikstal's voice was steady but urgent. These humans have fought beside us. They have proven their worth. To flee now would be dishonorable. Honor does not survive death, the tactical officer said. If we stay, we all die. If we leave, at least Dravik lives are preserved. Then preserve them. Captain Taman's voice cut through the debate. He stood at the bridge entrance, having arrived without announcement. His face was calm, but his eyes blazed with determination. Commander Vexcor, I release you from any obligation. You saved us once. You fought beside us. You owe us nothing more. Take your crew and go. We will buy you time. Vexcor turned to face the human captain. And how will 73 humans armed with hand weapons and no ship buy time against 27 warships? Taman smiled, and it was not a happy expression. We'll figure something out. We always do. Commander Vexcor stared at the small, fragile human who stood before him, offering to die so Draviks could live. Then he began to laugh, a deep rumbling sound that filled the bridge. Figure something out. I believe you would try. He turned to his crew. All stations prepare for combat. We do not abandon warriors regardless of what species they are born to. If we die today, we die with honor. The bridge erupted into activity. Krikstal saw several young Dravik officers grin with battle anticipation. The older ones simply nodded, accepting the decision without question. This was the Dravik way. You stood with your battle brothers until the end. But not every Dravik agreed. A senior officer, Corvin, stepped forward. Commander, this is madness. We should preserve Dravik lives, not throw them away for aliens. Vexcor turned cold eyes on the objector. You believe we should run? I believe we should survive. Then you may take a shuttle and flee. Vexcor's voice was ice. I will not stop you, but you will leave this ship alone, because every warrior here has chosen to stand. Corvin looked around the bridge. No one met his eyes. He was alone in his cowardice. After a long moment, he bowed his head. I will stay, Commander. I will not flee while my brothers fight. Vexcor nodded. Good, then prepare your station. We have 4 minutes before they arrive. Krikstal found himself assigned to a boarding team with Juan. The security officer was checking his weapon, his movements stiff from healing injuries. Around him, other humans prepared for battle. They were outnumbered, outgunned, and facing certain death, yet none of them looked afraid. Grim, yes. Determined, absolutely. But not afraid. How do you do it? Krikstal asked. How do you face death so calmly? Juan looked up from his weapon. We're always facing death, Krikstal. Every human lives with the knowledge that we're fragile, that our time is short. You get used to it, and when you're defending something that matters, dying doesn't seem so terrible. What are you defending? Your ship is gone. Your colony is lost. What is left to fight for? Juan gestured around at the other humans preparing for battle. Them, each other. The idea that even if we fall standing. That's enough. Yuna's voice came over the communication system, engineering to bridge. I've done something probably crazy. The Void Serpent's main reactor can be overloaded like we did with the New Dawn. But the ship is bigger. The explosion would be much larger. Vexcor responded immediately. How much larger? Enough to destroy everything within 5,000 kilometers, including us. Silence stretched across every channel. Then Taman spoke. Commander, we have no chance of conventional victory. But if we can draw the Vreth fleet in close, if we can make them think we're crippled and vulnerable, that explosion could take most of them with us. It would be suicide, Vexcor said flatly. It would be victory, Taman countered. The Vreth would lose their fleet. They would think twice before attacking other ships in this sector. Our deaths would mean something. Krixtal felt his heart's pound. This was insane. This was glorious. This was exactly what humans did. They took their vulnerability, their mortality, and weaponized it. They turned their own deaths into weapons. How long to prepare the overload? Vexcor asked. 10 minutes. But once started, we can't stop it. And we'll need to keep the Vreth close, make them think they're winning. Vexcor looked at Taman. You understand that this means everyone dies? Human and Dravik alike? I understand. But I'm asking you to choose. Do we die running or do we die fighting in a way that matters? The commander's tail lashed once, twice. Then he straightened. Engineering, begin the overload sequence. All personnel, new orders. We will engage the Vreth fleet at close range. We will fight as if we believe we can win, and when the reactor detonates, we will take as many of them with us as possible. It has been an honor serving with all of you. The Vreth fleet arrived like a storm of metal and fire. They came in confident, weapons blazing. The Void Serpent met them head-on, shields flaring under the assault. The ship's weapons fired back, targeting engines and weapon systems, trying to disable rather than destroy. They needed the Vreth fleet to stay close. Boarding torpedoes launched from both sides. Krixtal's team hit the hull of a Vreth cruiser and cut through. Inside they found fierce resistance. But this time, humans and Draviks fought as one unit. Krixtal's strength and armor broke through enemy lines. Juan's tactics and precision eliminated threats before they could respond. They were devastating together, but the Vreth kept coming. For every enemy they defeated, 2 more appeared. The Void Serpent shook under sustained fire. Systems failed. Crew members died. The ship was being torn apart slowly. In the engineering section, Yuna worked frantically to maintain the reactor overload. The process was delicate, too fast, and they would explode before the Vreth fleet gathered close enough. Too slow, and the enemy would realize what was happening and retreat. Soman worked beside her, not as an engineer but as a friend. How long? She asked. 3 minutes. The reactor will reach critical mass and then nothing can stop it. 3 minutes. Soman laughed, slightly hysterical. I always thought I'd die in bed, old and surrounded by grandchildren. Not vaporized in space at 32. Yuna looked at her friend. I'm sorry. This was my idea, don't be. It's a good idea. Crazy, but good. Soman touched the engineer's shoulder. We're going to save people. Ships passing through this sector will be safer. Because the Vreth will be gone. That's not a bad way to go. On the bridge, Commander Vexicor coordinated the battle with cold precision. He had been a warrior for 2 centuries. He had fought in campaigns across the galaxy. This would be his last battle, and he intended to make it memorable. All ships focus fire on the Void Serpent's port side, the Vreth commander ordered over open channels. Tear them apart! The Vreth fleet concentrated their fire, exactly as Vexcor hoped. They gathered closer, pressing their advantage. The Dravik ship's shields failed. Hull breaches appeared. The ship was dying, and the Vreth wanted to watch it happen up close. Krixtal fought his way back to the Void Serpent, dragging wounded with him. He passed bodies of both humans and Draviks. Friends and comrades, they had died buying time for a plan that would kill everyone. He reached the bridge and found Vexicor standing calmly at his post. Report, the commander said. Boarding teams are returning. Casualties at 60%. The Vreth are pressing their advantage. Good, let them come closer. Vexcor checked his chronometer. 2 minutes to detonation. Evacuation pods? Prepared, but they won't get far enough before the explosion. I know. I am not suggesting we use them. I simply wanted confirmation that we tried everything. Vexcor turned to face his crew. You have all served with distinction. I am proud to die beside you. Captain Taman stood beside the commander. The small human barely reached the Dravik's chest, but in that moment they seemed equally tall. It's been an honor, Commander. The honor was mine, Captain Taman. Your species taught me much about courage. Krixtal watched the chronometer count down. 90 seconds. 60 seconds. The Vreth fleet surrounded them now, close enough that their hulls nearly touched. They thought they had won. They were celebrating their victory. 30 seconds Krixtal thought of his 347 years of life. The battles fought. The species studied. The knowledge accumulated. It all led to this moment. Crixtal stood on the observation deck of the Void Serpent, watching the stars drift past in silence. He had seen 347 cycles of life, which made him young by Dravic standards, but old enough to have fought in 12 wars. His scales were dark green, harder than most metals, and his claws could tear through ship hulls if needed. He was a warrior scholar, sent to document new species for the Dravic Empire. The life of an observer was usually boring. Most species in the galaxy were weak and uninteresting. They built their cities, traded their goods, and died without making any real impact. Crixtal had documented 43 species so far, and none of them impressed him. The Dravics were superior in every way that mattered. Stronger, faster, smarter, and they lived for centuries while other species barely survived a few dozen years. The alarm broke the silence. Crixtal's head snapped toward the control panel as red lights flashed across the bridge. Commander Vexcor's voice boomed through the speakers. All stations prepare for combat observation. We have detected a distress signal. Crixtal moved quickly to his station. His thick tail balanced his weight as he worked the controls with practiced efficiency. The screen showed a sector map with 2 signals. One was a small vessel, clearly civilian. The other was a group of raider ships closing in fast. Species identification? Vexcor asked. The science officer checked his screens. The civilian vessel is human, Commander. The raiders are Vreth. Crixtal felt a flicker of interest. Humans. He had heard of them but never seen one. They were new to space travel. Barely 200 years since their first colony ships left their homeworld. The reports said they were weak even by galactic standards. Soft skin, fragile bones, short lives. But they spread across space anyway, building colonies on worlds that stronger species avoided. Can they defend themselves? Vexcor asked. Unlikely, Commander. Human vessels are lightly armed. The Vreth have superior firepower. Vexcor clicked his claws together, thinking. Then we observe. I want full documentation of human combat behavior. This is a rare opportunity. Crixtal activated his recording equipment. The Void Serpent moved closer, staying just outside the battle zone. Through his screens, he could see the human ship now. It was called the New Dawn, according to the registry. A colony vessel carrying families to a new world. The ship was damaged already, trailing oxygen and fuel into space. The Vreth raiders circled like predators. There were 5 of them, each one heavily armed. They fired warning shots, demanding the humans surrender their cargo and passengers. Crixtal had seen this before. The Vreth were slavers and thieves, taking what they wanted from weaker species. The humans are responding, the communications officer said. Audio coming through, a voice filled the bridge. It was calm, controlled, speaking in the common galactic language. This is Captain Taman of the New Dawn. We have nothing of value to you. These are civilian colonists, families, and children. Leave us in peace. One of the Vreth captains laughed, a harsh sound. Then you die quickly instead of slowly. Your choice, human. The Vreth ships opened fire. Plasma bolts struck the New Dawn's shields, which flickered and weakened. Crixtal watched the human ship closely. He expected panic, chaos, maybe a desperate attempt to run. Instead, the New Dawn turned to face its attackers. They're fighting back, the science officer said, surprise in his voice. The human ship's weapons were small, almost laughable compared to the Vreth arsenal, but they fired with precision. The first shot disabled a raider's engine. The second struck another's weapon array. The humans weren't trying to destroy their enemies. They were buying time. Interesting, Vexcor muttered. They know they cannot win, but they fight strategically. Crixtal increased his scan resolution. He could see inside the New Dawn now, watching the crew move through the damaged corridors. There was a woman in the engine room, her hands moving fast over the controls. She was rerouting power, strengthening shields in some areas while leaving others exposed. Smart but desperate. On the bridge, Captain Taman stood surrounded by screens and crew members. His face showed stress but not fear. He gave orders quickly and his crew obeyed without question. A security officer named Juan coordinated the weapons fire, making every shot count. The Vreth pressed their attack. One of them broke through the human shields and latched onto the hull. Cutting tools sparked as they began to breach. Crixtal watched Juan leave the bridge, moving toward the breach point with a small team. They carried primitive kinetic weapons, projectile guns that seemed ancient compared to energy weapons. The Vreth cut through, 6 raiders poured into the corridor expecting easy prey. Instead, they found prepared defenders. The humans had set up barriers and cover positions. They opened fire the moment the raiders entered. Krikstal leaned closer to his screen. The humans were tiny compared to the Vreth. One human barely reached a Vreth warrior's chest. But they fought with coordination and discipline. When one human reloaded, another covered them. They used the corridor's tight space to their advantage, preventing the raiders from using their superior numbers. One human fell, struck by a plasma bolt. The wound looked terrible, and Krikstal marked them as dead. But the humans' companions dragged them to safety and kept fighting. They didn't break. They didn't run, Commander, Krikstal said slowly. These humans are remarkably resilient for such a weak species. Vexcor nodded. I see it. Continue observation. The battle continued for 20 minutes. The humans lost ground slowly, falling back through their ship corridor by corridor. But they made the Vreth pay for every meter. Traps exploded. Ambushes caught raiders off guard. The woman in the engine room, Yuna according to her name patch, did something that made the ship's reactor pulse with energy. One of the Vreth ships suddenly lost power, its systems fried by an electromagnetic pulse. Krikstal blinked in surprise. The humans had weaponized their own damaged reactor. Commander, recommend we intervene, the tactical officer said. The humans will lose, but they have shown remarkable capability. They may be worth preserving. Vexcor considered for a long moment. Agreed, besides the Vreth are vermin. Target their ships. Disable, not destroy. I want some alive for questioning. The Void Serpent dropped its stealth fields and powered weapons. The Dravik warship was 10 times larger than any Vreth raider. Its first shot vaporized a raider's weapon systems. The second disabled their engines. Within minutes, the Vreth fleet scattered, leaving 2 disabled ships behind. Krikstal opened a channel to the New Dawn. Human vessel, this is the Dravik ship Void Serpent. You are safe. We will assist with repairs. There was a pause. Then Captain Taman's voice came through, tired but steady. Thank you, Void Serpent. We appreciate your intervention. Krikstal studied the human ship. It was barely holding together. Over a third of its crew were injured or dead. Any other species would be in chaos, but the humans were already organizing damage control, tending to wounded and securing their ship. Prepare a boarding party, Vexcor ordered. I want full documentation of these humans. Krikstal, you will lead the cultural assessment. Krikstal acknowledged the order and prepared his equipment. As he headed to the airlock, he felt something he hadn't experienced in decades. Curiosity. These fragile creatures had impressed him, and that was rare. When the airlock opened and he stepped onto the New Dawn, Captain Taman was waiting. The human was small, reaching only to Krikstal's chest. His skin was pale and looked terribly vulnerable. No scales, no natural armor, nothing to protect him. Yet he stood straight and met Krikstal's eyes without fear. Welcome aboard, Taman said simply, though I apologize for the mess. Krikstal looked around at the damaged corridor, the wounded being carried past, the scorch marks on the walls. He looked back at the small, fragile captain who had just fought off 5 raider ships with an undermanned colony vessel. Captain Taman, Krikstal said slowly, I would very much like to understand your species better. Taman smiled, tired but genuine. Then you've come to the right place. Though I warn you, we're full of surprises. As Krikstal followed the human deeper into the ship, he recorded his first note. Initial observation. Humans are physically weak but mentally formidable. Further study required to understand this paradox. The New Dawn limped into the Void Serpent's docking bay like a wounded animal seeking shelter. Krikstal watched from the observation window as magnetic clamps secured the damaged colony ship. Repair drones swarmed around it immediately, their sensors scanning the extent of the damage. It was worse than he thought. The ship should not have survived the battle at all. Commander Vexcor assigned Krikstal to work directly with the humans during repairs. His mission was simple: assess their military potential and document their capabilities. Krikstal approached the task with scientific detachment. After all, he had studied dozens of species. Humans would be no different. He was wrong. The first human he met properly was Soman, the ship's medical officer. She was working in a temporary medical bay set up in one of the Void Serpent's cargo holds. The space was filled with injured humans, and the smell of blood hung in the air. Human blood, Krikstal noted, was red and thin, not the thick green ichor that flowed through Dravik veins. Soman was small, even by human standards. She barely reached Krikstal's midsection. Her hands moved quickly over a patient using strange medical tools that seemed primitive compared to Dravik technology. She looked exhausted, with dark circles under her eyes and her hair pulled back in a messy tie. "You must be the Dravik observer," she said, without looking up from her work. "Give me a moment. This one's bleeding internally." Krikstal watched as she worked. Her movements were efficient, practiced. The patient groaned in pain and she spoke softly to him, reassuring him even as her hands moved to repair the damage. After several minutes, she stepped back and nodded to her assistant. "He'll live. Keep him monitored for the next 6 hours." She turned to Krikstal and wiped her bloody hands on a cloth. "Sorry about that. We lost a lot of people in the fighting. What can I help you with?" "I am conducting a physical assessment of human capabilities," Krikstal said. "I would like to understand your biology." Soman raised an eyebrow. "That's a broad topic. Be more specific. Your durability in combat. Your strength. Your natural defenses." Krikstal pulled out his datapad. "In the battle, I observed that humans sustained significant casualties from injuries that would barely harm a Dravik. Yet you continued fighting. I wish to understand this paradox." Salman's expression shifted to something Krikstal couldn't quite read. Was it amusement, pride? She gestured to an empty medical bed. "Sit. I'll give you the basics." Krikstal settled onto the bed, which groaned under his weight. Draviks were much heavier than humans. Soman pulled up a holographic display showing a human body next to a Dravik one. "Let's start with the obvious," she said. "We're fragile. Our skin is soft, easily cut or burned. We have no natural armor like your scales. A fall from height can break our bones. We need to eat multiple times per day or we weaken. We need sleep every single day, not once a week like you. We overheat easily, freeze easily, and our organs can fail from impacts that wouldn't even bruise you." Krikstal recorded all of this. "Then how do you survive? How did you even reach space?" Soman smiled. "Good question. We survive because we're stubborn and adaptable. We can't take much damage, so we learn to avoid it. We invented armor, weapons, medicine. We work together because alone we die fast. And we're really, really good at not giving up." She pulled up images of human anatomy. "See our spine? It's vulnerable, but it's also flexible. We can twist and turn in ways your rigid skeletal structure can't. Our hands are weaker than your claws, but more precise. We can manipulate tiny objects, build complex tools. Our brains are smaller than yours, but we think differently, creatively." Krikstal studied the images. "But in direct combat, you are at a severe disadvantage." "Absolutely," Soman agreed. "One-on-one, a Dravik would destroy a human in seconds. But we don't fight one-on-one. We fight smart. We use tactics and strategy, technology. We hit you from angles you don't expect, and we never ever stop trying." A groan from across the room interrupted them. One of the injured humans was waking up. It was Juan, the security officer Krikstal had seen fighting at the breach point. Soman hurried over and Krikstal followed. Juan's injuries were severe. A plasma burn covered his left side and his right arm was immobilized. The medical readouts showed internal damage that would take weeks to heal, if he healed at all. A Dravik with such injuries would be up and walking within days, scales already regenerating. "How do you feel?" Soman asked gently. Juan's eyes opened slowly. "Like I got hit by a ship." "How bad is it?" "Bad enough that you're grounded for a month. But you'll live." Soman checked his vital signs. "You're lucky. The plasma bolt missed your spine by centimeters." Juan tried to laugh but winced instead. "Lucky, right, that's me." Krikstal stepped forward. "Security Officer Juan, I watched you fight at the breach point. You were injured protecting civilians who were evacuating through that corridor." "That's the job," Juan said simply. His voice was strained with pain but steady. "Someone has to stand between the monsters and the people who can't fight. But you knew you would be injured. Your armor was inadequate. Your weapons were inferior. Logic suggests you should have retreated." Juan's eyes met Krikstal's. Despite the pain, despite the weakness of his injured body, there was something unbreakable in that gaze. Logic, maybe. But I've got a wife and daughter on this ship. I've got friends, neighbors, kids I've watched grow up. You think I'm going to let raiders hurt them? Not while I'm still breathing." Soman placed a hand on Juan's shoulder. "That's enough talk. Rest now. Doctor's orders." As Juan's eyes closed, Krikstal recorded more notes. "Subject displays irrational courage in the face of certain injury. Possible explanation: Emotional attachment overrides survival instinct. Over the next several days, Krixtal observed more humans. He watched Yuna work in the engine room, her hands moving through machinery that was partially melted from the reactor pulse she had triggered. She worked 16 hours straight, refusing rest until critical systems were repaired. When Krixtal asked why she pushed herself so hard, she just shrugged. "We need engines to get to our colony world. People are counting on me. I'll rest when the job's done." He observed Captain Taman coordinating repairs, managing resources, and keeping crew morale high despite their losses. The captain barely slept 3 hours a night, always available when his crew needed him. "Don't your people ever rest?" Krixtal asked one evening, finding Taman on the New Dawn's damaged bridge. Taman looked up from his datapad. "Of course we do. But right now there's too much to do. Rest comes later. A Dravik would be more efficient. We can work longer without fatigue." "Maybe," Taman acknowledged. "But we have something you might not. We have a reason that goes beyond efficiency. These people trusted me to get them to a new home. I won't let them down no matter how tired I am." Krixtal tilted his head. "This emotional motivation? It seems to compensate for physical weakness," Taman smiled. "You could say that. Or you could say our physical weakness made our emotional strength necessary. We're soft, so we had to be tough in other ways. Our bodies break, so our spirits learned not to." One night, Krixtal was reviewing his data in his quarters when an alarm sounded. Not a combat alarm, but a medical emergency. He rushed to the medical bay and found chaos. One of the injured humans was failing, their body going into shock from delayed complications. Soman was working frantically, surrounded by equipment and assistants. Her hands shook with exhaustion, but she didn't stop. For 2 hours, she fought to save the patient. Krixtal watched in fascination. A Dravik doctor would have been calmer, more detached. But Soman poured everything into the effort, her face showing determination and desperation. Finally, the patient stabilized. Soman stepped back, breathing hard. Then she walked to a corner and sat down, her head in her hands. Krixtal approached carefully. "You saved them," he said. "Barely," Soman replied. Her voice was rough. "I almost lost them. Another minute but you succeeded. Why do you seem distressed?" Soman looked up at him. Her eyes were wet. "Because almost losing them scared me. Because every person on this ship matters. Because we're all fragile, and I'm responsible for keeping them alive, and sometimes that weight is crushing." Krixtal sat down beside her, his tail curling around his feet. Among Draviks, a doctor would not show such emotion. It is seen as weakness. "Maybe it is weakness," Soman said quietly, "but it's also why I care enough to fight for every single life. Your people might be stronger physically, but do they care like this? Do they feel like this?" The question haunted Krixtal. That night, he reviewed his notes and realized something profound. Human weakness wasn't just physical. It was the foundation of everything else about them. Because they were fragile, they valued life more. Because they could die easily, they fought harder to survive. Because they needed each other, they built stronger bonds. His final note for the day read, "Hypothesis: human strength exists because of weakness, not despite it. Physical vulnerability has created psychological resilience unmatched in any species I have studied." The next morning, long-range sensors detected something that made Krixtal's scales tighten with dread. A massive Vreth fleet was approaching. Not raiders this time, but a full military extraction force. They were coming to finish what they started, and this time there would be no easy victory. The alarm cut through the Void Serpent like a blade. Krixtal was in the human medical bay reviewing his notes with Soman when the lights shifted to red. Commander Vexacor's voice echoed through every corridor. "All hands to battle stations. Vreth fleet detected. Multiple capital ships incoming." Soman's face went pale, but her hands were steady as she began securing medical equipment. Krixtal accessed his command link and pulled up the tactical display. His stomach sank. The sensor readings showed 15 Vreth warships, 3 times larger than their previous raiding force. This was no random attack. This was revenge. "Can we outrun them?" Soman asked, her voice tight. Krixtal checked the numbers. The Void Serpent can jump to faster than light speed. But the New Dawn cannot, not with its damaged engines. "If we run, we leave your people behind." "Then you should run." Soman looked at him directly. "You've done enough. You saved us once. We won't ask you to die for us." But Krixtal was already moving toward the door. "Commander Vexcor will decide. I must reach my combat station." He found Vexicor on the bridge studying the tactical situation. The other Dravik officers moved with practiced efficiency, preparing weapons and shields. Vexicor's tail lashed back and forth, a sign of agitation. "Analysis," the commander demanded. "The Vreth have numerical superiority," the tactical officer reported. 5-1 advantage. However, our ship is significantly more advanced. Estimated probability of victory 40%. And the humans? Their ship is barely functional. They have limited weapons and compromised shields. If we engage, they will likely be destroyed in the opening assault. Vexicor's claws tapped against his command chair. "Krikstal, your assessment of human combat capability?" Krikstal thought of everything he had observed. The tactical brilliance, the refusal to surrender, the way they turned weakness into advantage. "They will fight, Commander. They will not run, even if we offer to evacuate them, and they will make the Vreth pay for every human life lost on, but they will lose." "Yes," Krikstal admitted. "They will lose, but they will lose fighting." Vexicor was silent for a long moment. Then he turned to the communications officer. "Open a channel to the New Dawn. Captain Taman, this is Commander Vexicor. Our sensors show a significant Vreth force approaching. We can escape, but your ship cannot make the jump in time. I offer you two choices. We evacuate your crew to our ship and run, or we stay and fight together. I will not lie to you. If we fight, we may all die." Captain Taman's voice came through the speakers, calm as always. "Commander, if you run, you live. If you stay, you risk your ship and crew for strangers. I won't ask that of you. Get your people to safety." "You did not answer my question, Captain. If we stay, will you fight?" There was a pause. Then Taman spoke, and Krikstal heard something in his voice he had not heard before. Not fear, not doubt, but a terrible, certain determination. "Commander, we will fight until our last breath, but I beg you, take our children. Take the civilians who cannot fight. Save them, and we will buy you time to escape." Vexicor looked around his bridge. Every Dravik officer met his gaze. Then one by one they signaled agreement. The commander showed his teeth in a Dravik smile. "Captain Taman, we are Draviks. We do not abandon those who have proven their courage. We will fight together. Prepare your crew for battle." Krikstal felt something stir in his chest. Pride. His commander had made the right choice. The honorable choice. He moved to his combat station and sealed his armor. Around him, other Draviks did the same. This would be bloody, but they would face it as warriors should. The Vreth fleet arrived like a storm. 15 massive ships dropped out of faster-than-light travel, weapons already charging. Krikstal recognized their formation from military texts. This was not a raid. This was an extermination. The lead Vreth ship sent a transmission. "Dravik vessel, you have interfered with our rightful salvage. Surrender the humans and their ship or be destroyed with them." Vexicor's response was simple. "Come and take them if you can." The battle began. Plasma fire lit up the void of space as both sides unleashed their weapons. The Void Serpent's shields flared under the assault, absorbing hit after hit. The ship's main cannon fired back, each shot precise and devastating. One Vreth ship lost its engines. Another's weapons went dark, but there were too many. The Vreth surrounded them, firing from all angles. The New Dawn fought beside the Void Serpent, its small weapons targeting weak points and disrupting enemy formations. Yuna had somehow coaxed more power from the damaged reactor. And the human ship's shields held longer than they should have. Then the Vreth boarding. Torpedoes launched. Krikstal watched on his screen as 6 torpedoes punched through the New Dawn's shields and latched onto the hull. Cutting torches sparked as the Vreth began to breach. His orders came immediately. Combat Team 3 deploy to the New Dawn, repel boarders. Krikstal grabbed his weapon and joined the team rushing to the airlock. They crossed to the human ship quickly, their armored boots magnetic against the hull. Inside they found chaos. The Vreth had breached in 3 locations. Krikstal could hear weapons fire echoing through the corridors. He led his team toward the nearest breach and found Juan already there. The human should not have been fighting. His injuries from the first battle were barely healed. But he was there anyway, armor strapped over bandages, weapon in hand. Around him, a squad of humans held a defensive line behind makeshift barriers. The Vreth warriors were massive, nearly as large as Draviks, with thick armor and powerful energy weapons. They pushed forward relentlessly. The humans fired back, their projectile weapons making sharp cracking sounds in the confined space. "Juan," Krikstal shouted. "Fall back! We will handle this." can't!" Juan shouted back, firing 3 quick shots that dropped a Vreth warrior. "Civilians behind us. Section C is full of families." Crickstal understood immediately. The humans could not retreat without exposing non-combatants. They were holding this corridor with injured soldiers and inadequate weapons because there was nowhere else to go. "Then we hold together," Crickstal roared. His Dravik team joined the defensive line, their heavier weapons adding to the firepower. The Vreth advance stalled, but in the tight quarters Crickstal saw the difference between species clearly. When a Dravik took a hit, their armor and scales absorbed most of the damage. They kept fighting. When a human took a hit, they went down hard. He watched a young human soldier, Jinho, take a plasma bolt to the chest. The wound was massive, burning through his armor like paper. Jinho fell backward, his weapon clattering away. 2 other humans dragged him to cover while continuing to fire one-handed. Crickstal saw Jinho's face, pale with shock, blood everywhere. That wound would barely slow a Dravik. For a human, it was fatal, but even dying, Jinho reached for a grenade on his belt. His hands shook, but he armed it and tossed it toward the Vreth. The explosion caught 3 raiders, stunning them long enough for the defensive line to advance. Soman appeared from a side corridor, medical equipment slung over her shoulder. She slid to Jinho's side and immediately began working, even as plasma bolts scorched the wall above her head. She did not hesitate, did not flinch. Her entire focus was on saving the dying soldier. The battle raged for 20 minutes. The corridor became a graveyard. Vreth bodies piled up, but so did human casualties. Crickstal fought beside Juan, watching the security officer move despite obvious pain. The human's aim was perfect. Every shot counted, every movement calculated. Then Crickstal heard something that made his blood run cold. A child's scream from the section behind them. One Vreth had broken through a side passage. It was moving toward the civilian area. Juan saw it too and moved to intercept, but his injured body was too slow. The Vreth would reach the civilians first. A figure stepped into the corridor. It was Minji, an engine maintenance worker. Crickstal had seen her working with Yuna, quiet and efficient. She was tiny, barely 5 feet tall, wearing a worker's jumpsuit. She carried only a welding torch. The Vreth warrior laughed when he saw her. He raised his weapon. Minji did not run. She thumbed her welding torch to maximum and charged. What happened next took only seconds but burned itself into Crickstal's memory forever. Minji was not a soldier. She had no training, no armor, no real weapon. But she had something else. Determination. The absolute refusal to let that Vreth hurt the children behind her. She dove under the warrior's first shot and shoved the welding torch into his armor joint. The torch burned at thousands of degrees, cutting through metal and flesh. The Vreth roared and swung at her. His armored fist connected with crushing force. Minji flew backward and hit the wall. Crickstal heard bones break. The Vreth stumbled, his leg damaged by the burn, but he was still functional. He aimed his weapon at the fallen maintenance worker. Juan's shot took the Vreth in the head. The warrior fell, but Minji did not get up. Crickstal reached her first. He knew before checking that she was gone. The impact had been too severe for a human body to survive. Her eyes stared at nothing, her hand still gripping the welding torch. She had bought 3 seconds. 3 seconds for Juan to take the shot. 3 seconds that saved the children in the next room. The battle continued, but Crickstal felt something change inside him. He had seen soldiers die before. He had seen courage. But this was different. Minji was not a warrior. She was just a worker who refused to let evil pass.